Permitidme que cambie al inglés de nuevo para presentar a nuestra siguiente invitada. Our next guest represents TeamLab, an international collective of interdisciplinary artists and programmers who create immersive exhibitions around the world. TeamLab has been the subject of numerous exhibitions at venues worldwide, including New York, London, Paris, Singapore, Madrid, Beijing, Taipei, and the infinity and beyond, and Melbourne, amongst others. It's a pleasure, a real pleasure to welcome Michaela Kane. Hello, Michaela.
Hello, thank you very much for having me.
It is a pleasure to receive you today. The stage is yours. Whenever you're ready, we're looking forward to listening to you.
Great, thank you. Hello, my name is Michaela Kane, as I was so skillfully introduced, and I'm a member of TeamLab. For those who don't know, TeamLab is an international art collective. We are comprised of many different specialists, such as artists, programmers, engineers, CG animators, mathematicians, architects, from all sorts of fields, and our collaborative practice seeks to explore the intersection between art, science, technology, and the natural world. Our goal, our universal concept, is to explore the relationship between the self and the world and new perceptions through art. So this is an example of some of the work we do. This exhibition is called Lab Borderless, and it is one of our more recent projects. It is a permanent museum. We have two locations, one in Tokyo and one in Shanghai. Our Tokyo location opened in the summer of 2018, and Shanghai opened in November 2019, so about a year ago now. And these two museums explore some of TeamLab's universal concepts. The concept behind them is that of borderlessness. And what I mean by that is that the artworks interact with the visitor. So artworks, if you touch them, they will react to your presence, or even if you just stand in a space, they might change according to what you do or where you stand or what the people around you are doing. These artworks also transcend the boundary of frame. They aren't staying in one specific place. They are moving around the entire museum and are in just constant change and constant flux. Because we have two borderless museums, we actually have artworks that even travel between the two museums, transcending the boundary of geographical location and moving between Shanghai and Tokyo. Our Tokyo Museum, as I mentioned, opened in June of 2018, and in its first year, we had the pleasure to welcome 2.5 million visitors from around the world. So it has been very exciting for us to be able to show our work to so many people. Let me see. Another example, another exhibition I wanted to share with everyone is our museum, TeamLab Planets. And this is a body immersive museum we created in Tokyo in 2018. In this
TeamLab Planets, Toyosu, Tokyo.
Visitors can take off their shoes and their socks, and they can actually physically immerse themselves in the artworks. Each of these works is on a massive scale, and it feels like you're walking into an entirely new world. One of the benefits of digital technology, which we use as a tool to create our art, is that it allows our bodies to become more immersed in the artwork than ever before. Because digital is non-material, we can use anything as a canvas for our art. If light is our paint, we can create artworks on water, in the air, on walls, on people even. And so you really have the opportunity to surround yourself and immerse yourself in the artworks at TeamLab Planets, to really physically feel them as you walk through them. It is through this experience that the boundary between the self and the world begins to disappear. Another recent museum that we have created is called TeamLab Forest. This is a new museum that consists of two parts, a catching and collecting forest and an athletic forest. Like all of our museums and most of our artworks, this one is also interactive. The catching and collecting forest actually introduces a new technology that we have created. We call it interconnected realities. So what people can do is that they can use the catching and collecting forest app to capture the animals they see around them in the real space projected on walls in the world around them. When they capture the animal, they can learn more about it by sort of reading information, seeing where the animal is from, what status it is in terms of how endangered it is, and then they can release the animal back into the real space. So unlike augmented reality, where you might hold up your phone and see, you know, the real world and then some augmented version in your phone, and you can change it only on your personal device, interconnected reality is sort of a two-way street where the changes you create on your phone can be seen in the outside world, and the changes in the outside world are reflected on your phone. So it's a much more connected space where you wind up participating much more with people around you, as you can learn more about each of these animals in turn. The animals in TeamLab Forest, many of them are on the endangered species list. So as you go about, the more times you collect each animal, the more information you get about them. So you might catch an animal once and learn its name and maybe the area of the world it's from. And if you catch it a second time, you might learn something new about the animal. We have both sort of land-bound creatures, deer and lions and elephants. And then we also have oceanic creatures that you can capture by casting a net into the world around you. And through creating these changes in the visible space, in a shared physical area, we believe that we can begin to realize that the world is more connected than we sometimes feel in our day-to-day lives. The second part of TeamLab Forest is the athletics forest, and this is a physical creative space where people can explore the world in 3 dimensions with their bodies, can interact with these artworks around them in a much more physically engaging way. So we have different sort of trampoline materials that people can walk across on, and the artwork sort of responds to that. We have these balancing stones and balancing steps that people can hop across, and as they move across, their surroundings change color and make noises with each of their steps. And so this is all just a way to explore how the world around us changes as we exist in it. The last exhibition I want to introduce briefly is our permanent exhibition in Macau. So we have created TeamLab Supernature, this extremely complex 3-dimensional interactive space with varying elevations that spans about 5,000 square meters and is comprised of enormous 8-meter tall works. So it is really sort of another body immersive space, similar to planets, where as you walk through it, you feel like you are being transported to different worlds and are just completely surrounded by artworks on a scale that is really quite unique. And so as you move around the artworks and change them, you really feel as though you are a part of a completely different world with those around you. And we hope that through this exhibition and through all of our exhibitions, that people can begin to realize as they change the world around them that we are not independent from the world, that everything exists on a single continuity, and that everything is connected. TeamLab Supernature is currently in a soft open state, and its grand open is to be announced shortly. So you can still go and visit if you are in the Macau area, but there are a few artworks that have not yet been revealed or have not yet debuted. And I would just like to give a quick little sneak peek to one of them, if I can. This next artwork that I want to show, hopefully it shows, is called Massless Clouds Between Sculpture and Life. And this is a little bit different from many of our works. Most of our works deal with very immaterial light as it shines on a space. Sometimes we'll have sort of floating orbs or hanging LED lights. But this is sort of our first, it's somewhat between material and immaterial. It's essentially a giant cloud-like mass that just floats and rotates in the middle of the space. People can enter it, they can sort of push their way through it. And the cloud is created in such a way that even as people break through it, it will self-repair. It will self-organize and reform into its original state, like a living entity does. But as with living things, when the cloud is destroyed beyond what it can repair, it cannot fix itself, and it begins to collapse and scatter into these smaller masses, as you can see. When we were creating this artwork, we were creating it right at the time when the coronavirus started to really pick up in Asia in particular. And so we sort of had to put it on pause for a moment, but it gave us time to consider, what is life exactly? Life is something that is it's actually quite difficult to define, because some scientists will say, oh, it's anything that reproduces, or, oh, it's anything that takes in energy and gives out entropy. But those sorts of definitions are actually quite contentious within the scientific community. Some people believe that viruses are alive because they self-replicate and they can self-repair, and others argue that no, viruses are not alive because of all these other reasons. And so this cloud mass can be seen as a sort of simulation of a state between life and non-life. It's hard to define it as alive because it doesn't have cells or anything, but it simulates a living system in that it repairs and dissipates. And so that is just to say that we use our artworks to sort of explore these larger concepts and ideas, and these things that we might not have clear or pretty definitions for, and that we play with all sorts of media. This next artwork is another one that we hope to show again soon at Macau. This is a floating flower garden. All of the flowers in this garden are actually real living orchids. We haven't shown this work in quite a while, but hopefully we will have the chance to show it again soon, and hopefully everyone will have the chance to visit, because it is so hard to explain and to convey how nice the space smells. It really engages all of your senses as you walk into this just field of floating flowers, and you can smell all of their sort of fresh flower scents as they move around you. As people move into the space, at first it looks impenetrable because there's this wall of plants around you. But as you walk in, the artwork senses your presence, and the flowers lift around you so that you can enter. And as you walk through, the flowers continue to lift as you go through, and then as you pass, they return back down, all sort of moving in concert with the people in the space. I want to make sure that we hit all of these various artworks just so I can show everyone what sort of works that we do, because there really is a huge variety. This next artwork I want to show is one that we have in our Borderless Museum in Shanghai. This is called Time Distortion in a Mirror, I believe, and it is this space comprised of nearly 1,000 moving lights that TeamLab has designed. And there are many different artworks in this space. Sometimes the lights shine with color, sometimes they shine in just white. But we use this immaterial light to construct a very physical feeling space around us. And this is sort of a phenomenon that we wound up kind of observing and creating by accident, wherein the light in the real world is reflected in the mirror, but there's a slight time distortion. You can see that as the light in the real world closes and opens where the woman is, the light in the mirror behaves with a certain delay. You can see that the time in the space itself becomes distorted. And I promise you, this isn't CGI, this isn't us going into the video in post and just altering it. It is just an accidental creation that we had. in our museum. We also have these sorts of light sculpture spaces in our museum in Macau. Whereas the time distortion video was comprised of these lines of light, our museum in Macau actually shows three-dimensional planes. So more like flattened lasers of light. And hopefully we can show that. This next one is part of our light sculpture plane series. There it is. And so we have, again, in Macau, a variety of these artworks, and this one is called Moire. And so you can see in contrast with the light sculpture line series, where the space was comprised of these very sort of one-dimensional lines as they move through the space, this one is comprised of these planes of light that creates this new gradient as they overlap with each other and create an almost entirely different feeling space. So what am I trying to show with all of this? What is the point? There's a lot of cool, pretty stuff that we make, and then why? Why do we do it? The reason, one of our main ideas, is to change the relationships among people. So what do I mean by that? Well, the artworks we create are participatory by making them interactive. We deal with many interactive things in our life. Video games, smartphones, the internet are all considered interactive. You plug in something and you return something. You Google something, you get results back, and that's interaction. But you have to involve yourself very intentionally. We go to Google to look something up to get results. We open our phone to take a photo to get the photo. There is a set of commands that we follow in order to get what we want from our interactive technology. What TeamLab aims to do is a little bit different. We want to connect this interactivity with art. And the type of interactivity that we pursue is one in which your presence transforms the work, whether or not you intend to do so. You can walk into a TeamLab exhibition or a TeamLab artwork and have no idea what to do. And even so, the artwork will change around you. This, of course, also applies to the people in the space with you, even if you don't know them. They will walk into the space and you might look over and see them cause a change that is beautiful in the space. And through this, we hope that their presence becomes something beautiful as well. I'll give an example of this. That'll be a bit easier to explain. Let me see. Here we are. This is an artwork called Flowers and People, and it is in a state of continuous change over the period of an hour. A year's worth of seasonal flowers will blossom and scatter. They bud, they grow, they bloom, and then their petals sort of wither and fade away. And this cycle of growth and death just repeats itself forever. The flowers are interactive. You can see where people stand. There are these groupings of flowers growing around them. The flowers are changing over the course of the hour. So in 1 hour, for one chunk of time, you might be there and the flowers are all spring flowers. They're all cherry blossoms or canola blossoms or daffodils. And then if you come back 20 minutes later, the season might have changed and you're surrounded by summer flowers, sunflowers, chrysanthemums, azalea, what have you. So as people stand still in the space, the flowers grow and bloom and propagate around them. But as people walk through it and move through the space, you can see the flowers actually fade away behind them. Their petals scatter and the flowers die all at once. So you can see it's a work that's influenced both by the internal logic and the time of it, but also by the people in the space. And it's very visible when it's happening. We actually first showed this work in New York at the Japan Society. And we were humbled and very surprised by how many people came to see our work. There were so many people in the space that actually they were all sort of moving around and touching the walls that eventually it turns out all the flowers just died and faded away. You can see that there are just blank walls and very confused guests wondering what happened. Why is this space empty? Why have all the flowers died? But then something interesting happened. All of the people started to talk to each other. They didn't, know one another. It was just a random group of people at a museum. But they decided that maybe there were no flowers because there were too many people in the space. And so some of them left. They all decided that half of them would move on and come back later, and the other half would stay. And because of their actions and their collaborations, flowers began to bloom again, and the room came back to life. This is not something that we had planned, nor something that we told anyone to do. It all just happened very naturally. And that was a very exciting moment for us and for the people in the exhibition as well. Let's contrast that with the sort of art that we've seen up until now. So here we have the Mona Lisa, most famous painting in the world, maybe, very well known, currently at the Louvre in Paris. And you may have been to see it. You might have been blown away by her beauty, her mysterious smile. There's so much interesting to see in this painting, but what no one ever talks about is the crowd, the other people who are with you in this museum, blocking her from your view. When people talk about the Mona Lisa, they never talk about the people around them as they do with TeamLab's work. So why is it that people ignore each other when they're standing in front of the Mona Lisa? Well, we think that this is because the Mona Lisa doesn't change. Regardless of what you or the people around you are doing, the artwork is separate from the viewer, from the visitor. The art is an object, and the viewer is just there to appreciate it. So people don't consider themselves or others as part of the art. And you might actually try to ignore other people as you view the art and try to appreciate it because they're in the way. What's important here is the connection between an individual and the artwork. It's a very one-on-one relationship. But TeamLab artworks do something different. Unlike the Mona Lisa, there is no single way to look at a TeamLab work. Instead, you're in it as part of the work, and you become connected to others who are also experiencing the work. Another example will be better to show this, as it always is. So this was TeamLab Transcending Boundaries, an exhibition that we held in Pace, London in 2017. And you can see in this video that when people stand in the path of the water, it flows around them. It just sort of parts around their feet and flows down the hallway. And where they stand, flowers actually bloom in their wake. In a normal exhibition, the presence of other people can detract from the experience of the work. We love visiting exhibitions or museums when they're empty, and it would be so lucky for us to see the Mona Lisa with no one else around. But in the case of TeamLab's work, although you could experience it by yourself, you can also appreciate how it interacts with other people. You can see butterflies fly from their feet. You can see the effect they have on the world around them. Unlike the Mona Lisa, our artworks change with the presence of people, and visitors can appreciate that change. Art made using digital technology makes the presence of other people more positive, even if you don't know them or understand them or can't control them. We have a few other examples of this being the case. We bring this artwork not only to traditional museums and galleries, but also to outdoors, real nature. Digital technology such as sensing networks, light and sound are non-material. They have no physical impact on the environment. So we can use these non-material digital technologies to transform nature into living art without harming it. Nature and the trees and the rocks and the forms that it takes has been created and has been formed over a very long period of time. And by turning nature into art, we hope that we can begin to understand this long period of time, this continuity that we don't often perceive. This is what our life's work. This is our annual exhibition in the real nature and mountains of Mifuneyama Rakuen, which is in Kyushu, sort of a southern island of Japan. It spans 500,000 square meters, and every summer we come here and we light up the entire pond and the mountain and the forest and the garden with all of these different artworks that respond to people as they walk through. The boundary between the forest and the garden on this site is very ambiguous. You might be wandering along trails and then accidentally go from the garden to wild, untamed forest. And it is this sort of continuity, this ambiguity, that we wanted to really highlight and really explore with our artworks. This park is also particularly historic. It was formed in the early 19th century, sort of created on a site that has been revered as something important culturally for millennia by all the generations of people who have lived there. So by bringing our artwork to it, we hope to not necessarily add to, but to find our own meaning in this place that has been so meaningful to others. So hopefully, if not this year, then perhaps next year, if things are open again, we can welcome you to Mifuneyama Rakuen, because it really is something to experience in person. It's not just nature, but also cities that we sort of alter with our art in ways that don't destroy the city or damage it at all. This next video is a public artwork that we created on the surface of the Art Science Museum in Singapore. So let's see here. Yes, here we are. So this is another interactive artwork. You can see that on the facade, the outside of the Art Science Museum, there are all these different Chinese characters, these written pictographs that are being sent onto the museum. When the characters are sent out there, the meaning that is imbued in those characters is released into the world. So if you send the character for flowers, flowers will bloom across the surface. If you send the character for fire, fire will burn. And it's interactive. Again, just using a website or the TeamLab app, you can select a character, swipe it up, send it out, and you can watch it appear on this very visible, very central public area. So that person sent out the character for flowers, and you can see all these flower petals scatter. These elements also interact with one another. So if I were to send out flower, you would see flowers bloom. But if someone else were to send out wind, the wind would blow all the flowers away. So it's this sense of creating a single artwork with other people. Even if we can't see them, this is such a central area that you could be on any side of it and not see the other people around you. But by seeing the effect that they're having on the artwork and the change that they're making, you can know that there are other people interacting with you and creating this artwork with you. So we love to be able to bring our work to nature, to city, to public spaces. Nowadays, that's a little bit challenging. With the coronavirus, it is a lot harder to gather in public places. It's dangerous even. So a lot of us have been forced to stay in our homes to sort of isolate, to quarantine for safety. And this can cause us to feel very alone, to feel very isolated. So what TeamLab has done is we wanted to bring people together, even in this time of isolation, even in this time when we can feel so alone. And so we created this new artwork called Flowers Bombing Home. This is an artwork that you can interact with from anywhere in the world. You could do it now. I don't know that you're looking at your phones while I'm speaking, so please feel free. You can Google Flowers Bombing Home TeamLab, and that will take you to our artwork website, where you can download an image of a flower. You can color it in. You can either print it out and color it in with markers or crayons, or you can just color it in on your smartphone or tablet or computer. You can rescan it back up onto the website, and then it will become part of a sort of publicly available artwork on the internet. We stream the artwork live on YouTube, So at any time, you can just look up the TeamLab Flowers Bombing Home artwork, and you can see the flowers that people around the world are creating and uploading in real time. So that is one way that we have been trying to still find a way to connect with people and to still remind us all that we are part of a continuity and that we can still create things together, even if we can't meet one another directly for a little bit longer. This is the URL for the YouTube Live, so if you want to check it out, please feel free. It's a really beautiful artwork with everyone participating in it. But yes, that is the brief introduction of TeamLab and the work that we do. And please, I hope that if when the world opens up, that people can come visit us and experience it for yourselves, because the videos really don't do it justice. But thank you.
Wow, Michaela, isn't this the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life? And I'm much older than I look. My God. I mean, of course, we're gonna have to fly all the way there. Macau, Japan, Shanghai, everything you mentioned. This was amazing presentation. We are honoring the title of this event, Inspirational, today with you and the other guests. But these exhibitions, what you showed us, these images are absolutely amazing. I am overwhelmed. So we have a few questions. Let me go and jump into them first. Hang on a second, Michaela. This was, wow, I'm in shock. I'm sure our viewers as well. I was trying to download the Google, but I didn't want to lose the questions. I'm going to do it tonight. And
please.
The project, the TeamLab home with the flowers and everything. I'm sure a lot of our viewers will do the same, so we'll see. Michaela, they ask you, do you believe that museums like now, our museums now, the museums will look like us in the future? So what type of museums await us? An immersive and digital experience? As you know, most museums are not like that. They don't have, so what do you think museums will look like in the future?
Well, we don't want to speak for other artists and for other museums and galleries, because of course everyone has different ways of exploring the world in the ways that they want. All we can do is continue to create what we do. And another thing I just want to mention is that we don't know if our work qualifies as art. We want to think it is art. We believe that art is something that changes people's perspectives, that causes them to change their way of thinking. And we hope that our work does that. But ultimately, history will be what tells us whether what we create is art or not. All we can do is keep making what we believe in. So as to what museums and galleries do, we certainly would like to be able to show in museums and galleries and parks and public spaces all around the world. But we wouldn't be able to speak for others. This is the work that we create, and this is the work that we believe in.
Sorry, Michaela, I think I misunderstood the question. Probably what they meant is the museums nowadays, they don't really adjust to a future and actually present. They are a bit of, I'm sorry to say this, to old-fashioned maybe, or they should be more interactive, more immersive, or not. I think it was more into the point. The sense of the question was more into other museums nowadays far away from the future that await us, or the present that await after seeing what you do, obviously. But I guess that your answer probably is more or less the same in the sense that each one has their own purpose.
Each one has their own purpose, and it varies from museum to museum. So there are certainly, we are represented by Pace Gallery, and Pace Gallery is one gallery based in New York and London. They have offices everywhere, but they have decided to take a leap with interactive artists such as ourselves and James Turrell, and are exhibiting, huge immersive exhibitions. They've actually recently announced the opening of Super Blue Miami, their sort of their own interactive immersive exhibition that TeamLab and a bunch of other artists will be showing at. So there are galleries that are changing and exploring new forms of art and new types of works.
Yeah. Well, it must be fascinating to attend one of your brainstorming meetings when you start preparing these projects. I can imagine all the ideas floating in the air.
Very chaotic. Very chaotic.
It is totally crazy.
Yes, okay. Yes, absolutely.
But they were asking you a question that I think you have answered already, how COVID, the crisis, has affected your projects from both a conceptualization point of view and a practical one, as it's a very immersive experience. And also, how do you transport this? It's not easy. It's not a painting. You cannot. The Mona Lisa, despite the care you have to transport it with, it's just a small piece. Was how all this crisis has affected your work from idea to visitors and to pure practical logistic problems of moving it around.
Sure. Let me start with the logistics. I think that'll be the quicker thing to start with. And that is that, yes, it's gotten a lot harder. Not only have some of our exhibitions had to be postponed or closed because we can't move to where they're being exhibited. We've had to limit the number of guests in many of our museums or even sort of temporarily close them. So that's obviously been very challenging for us and for our exhibition partners. However, we have been able to find certain workarounds. There are times when we have been able to install artworks remotely, and that is sort of the benefit of digital technology. It's not a material thing, so we are able to transmit it to other places. That being said, we rely so much on looking at the space when we're creating the artworks. The artworks are really meant to reflect and take advantage of the uniqueness of a space. So that has definitely made things quite a bit harder for us at this time. In terms of the concept, as I've mentioned a little bit, it has also forced us to think about our concepts. It used to be that what was most important to us was bringing people together in a physical space to share and engage in the artwork with one another. Now that's a lot harder and is sometimes unsafe, which is why we were inspired to create the work Flowers Bombing Home, to be able to bring our work to the public internet space. If we can't bring people together in a physical space, then we have to come up with new ideas and new ways to remind ourselves that we are connected. And so that it was a sort of impetus to create this new work and to explore this new idea that we had.
That was lovely as well. That was lovely. We're running out of time, Michaela. Just a very quick, more questions, but they're asking you, when are you coming? When are you coming to Spain? When are your artworks, your exhibitions coming to Spain? Do you have any plans despite the situation? Do you know, maybe 2021?
Well, we do actually currently have a plan to show our work at Caixa Forum in Barcelona.
Hey, excellent.
So it's all depending on the situation, but we hope to be there in spring of next year. And we're hoping to bring some of our works to Spain. And hopefully I can go as well and help with that.
Excellent. So, we will hold on to that then, Michaela. So because you opened our eyes, now we want to experience that as well, despite we're going to do the project at home, but you've shown us a new world of experiences where at least I can't wait to do it. So next meeting will be spring in Barcelona in 2021. Until then, I want to thank you so much, Michaela Kane, and the whole team, TeamLab. My God, you are doing an amazing job. As you said, with the idea of changing relationships amongst people. And I think you've succeeded. So big kiss to you and to the whole team. And thank you for being with us in this Inspirational 20. I have to say goodbye.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Thank you.